Welcome to the Exploratory. Good afternoon. I am Gorgeous Falcon, like it says right here. And today I'm going to share with you how I've been collaborating with the community, and that is through contributing to Postman Public Workspaces. So let's get started. The first thing that we need is a workspace to contribute to. So let's go ahead and search for it. And there is a program which is the Google Summer of Code. It's a program for student developers, which I've been eyeing since a really long time. So I see a public workspace hosted by Postman. And let's find out if this is the one that I can collaborate on and contribute to. So like it says here, this is a workspace that is used for development of APIs. And there is a proposal, a GitHub repository. And one thing that I usually use to understand whether I need to or want to invest time in collaborating or contributing to something is to see how active the workspace is and how actively it's being maintained. So if we scroll over to activity over here, I could actually filter by user. I think for now it's just one member named Meenakshi, who looks like my twin. And there is, we can filter by entities. So I see the last change here was made about 20 hours ago, which is amazing. So that means this workspace is pretty actively maintained or being worked upon. So that's one requirement check. The other requirement that I have and something that I look for is to understand how popular an entity in the workspace is. So if I want to see how popular the spec converter API collection is, I could do that by coming here. And it's prompting me to watch the collection, which means once I click on it, I will be notified of any changes that happen on the collection, which is something that I want to do. Considering if I want to contribute to this, collaborate on this, I want to be notified of any recent developments that happen. So I'm going to go ahead and watch it. And this one over here, it says one, which is the one fork that has currently been created. Let's try it out. Let's go ahead, click on it and create a fork. And what a fork will do is it will create a new collection and it's still going to reference the original, which means that you can make changes to your own forked copy of it, and you'll be able to merge or pull changes and raise pull requests as well to the origin. Like by adding a fork label and the workspace that you want the fork to be created in. So I'm going to cancel at this moment because the one fork that has been created is actually by me. I have been contributing to this workspace since a while. So yeah, one other thing I'd like to highlight is even though the number of watchers and the people who are forking this workspace is actually pretty much just me, I think it's a good opportunity to contribute to a project in its early stages. I have a lot more to collaborate on and my feedback is really important for the team. So that's why I'm choosing. You could go ahead, find a public workspace on the network which has maybe more watchers and more forks, and that's an option as well. So let's say you have decided to contribute to the public workspace, and that's what I've decided. Then in order to contribute to it, we want to understand what the workspace consists of. What are the entities that I'd like to contribute to? So there's one collection, there's an API, and there's one environment. And let's go over, check out the API that's there. And this is the spec converter API. It's a YAML definition. And if I go over to the definition, I see that there are two APIs. There's one API here. And it seems like it converts the spec to the target format, which gives me a fair idea of probably that there's some conversion work that's going on in this API. And I want to go over and check how often this API is updated, how often there are changes made to this version, which is probably just once initially, so it's not very often. And so I also have an option of whether I want to watch changes that are made to this API. Since I'm watching the collection anyway and I don't see a lot of changes in the changelog, I'm choosing not to watch this API at the moment, which is an option. So I'll go back to the workspace and I want to scan the run environment that it has. It has local environment, which is referring to the base URL, which makes me feel, of course, that I would need to deploy something locally in order to test this API out. And at this point, I really want to share with the maintainers or just ask them if there is an instance of this API which is deployed on a higher environment, maybe Heroku. So what I'm going to do is I went over to the collection and under the comments, I'm actually just going to leave a comment for them asking if the API is deployed on is deployed on a higher environment. Example, let's say on Heroku. And I'm going to add comment. Yep, and maybe Meenakshi is going to see this comment. So while we're at comments, there's one thing in particular that I want to show off about my contributions, and that is a comment. So the request that we see here, I think it was a bit confusing initially when I had forked the workspace and the values that it had weren't as we see them today. So I'd like to show you the kind of contributions that I made. If we go over to comments, and there aren't open comments, but there would be resolved comments, the ones that I had commented. And I provided my feedback. I said if we could change the param default value, it was X, which doesn't really indicate much. So it could be either JSON or YAML. And the maintainers actually made the change to the default value and thanked me for my input. So through my comment, I was able to contribute, share feedback on the workspace. And yeah, going over to, again, the documentation bit of it, let's check the complete documentation. And what I'm doing at this moment is just looking for places where I can understand what's happening in this collection and some scope for contribution. And the documentation is really minimal, which again makes me feel that there's a lot that we could do. Like one of you watching this video could fork the collection and help more with the documentation. Somebody starting off may not even know like what OpenAPI or Swagger and all the API jargon is. So just describing all of that could be some contribution or some feedback that we could add to the collection. Great. Another way that I contributed to the collection and share my feedback, of course, is I raised a pull request. So add default values for params. That was the feedback that I gave. And this is my pull request, which is merge with the source. And the changes that I just simply made are, I just replaced the placeholder values with some meaningful default values and give a description of what the change is and what I made to the collection. And it got merged with the source. Let's go over and actually look at the source collection where the fork, which is where I raised the pull request from. So this is a fork of the original, and we saw documentation in the original one. Like there was some text, but there isn't here. And there may be a case that your fork or your copy of the origin isn't pointing to the latest one. So there is an option to pull changes. And that's what I'm going to do because the origin may have been modified. And there are so many modifications that I need to pull at this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these changes. Yep. And the changes are pulled, close. And that's how I'd like to end it. So we've seen a couple of ways that you could collaborate and contribute to the public workspaces. There are a lot of public workspaces on the network. So go ahead, choose projects that you want to contribute to and help out with the community. Another thing that I'd like to highlight is this video was made from the perspective of a contributor or somebody who wants to collaborate and share their feedback. But if you're somebody who wants to create a public workspace or is somebody on the API producer side, then you may want to watch the exploratory that is about public workspaces. Thank you.